developments out of the UK. British politics is in chaos after the resignation of Boris Johnson less than 12 hours ago. After months of chaos and days of terminal pressure, he resigned as the Conservative Party leader. But he remains Prime Minister until they can find a new one. So let's go to our Sky News host, Laura J. She joins us live from Westminster this morning. Laura, it's just gone after 9 p.m. Just bring us up to speed. How did it all unfold?
It's been a long day. It happened less than 12 hours ago. Boris Johnson, Pete, you know, is a name really synonymous with chaos, but he couldn't ride out this chaos in the end, and that's what this day is being punctured by. It really started with a resignation a couple of days ago, and then up until now, days and days of resignations. There was a flurry of them today. At the moment, we're counting 60. So that's what it all came down to. He lost the support of his colleagues. If you talk to the Westminster establishment, it's Boris Johnson falling on his own sword. What the rest of the country thinks, well, it's hard to work out at the moment. But Boris Johnson was hunkered down for hours at number 10 this morning. He took hours to come out and make this press statement. When he did, I think he was fairly laconic. He wasn't at all emotional, and he had some of that trademark humour with a bit of spice thrown in too.
But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable.
When the herd moves, it moves. So he's gone, but not really, because he essentially stays now until October. So why is that?
Yeah. Well, that's right. Well, half the party is on board with this needing to be the case, and the other half since he needs to go right now with another interim PM until the party meets in October. So that's still a couple of months away. Boris Johnson maintains that this is the best way forward. He basically, that press statement today was, look, I've heard you, I'm going, but we need to do this in an orderly way. So I've got to stay for now. So he is the lamest of lame duck prime ministers, but as some of his detractors have been commenting today, Pete, well, if you were Boris Johnson and you were a lame duck PM, do you really trust him not to make some big decisions, perhaps a few peerages along the way? I mean, I don't think he would do that, and that's a little bit cheeky of me to suggest. But essentially, we've talked about this before, the powerful 1922 committee. A couple of months ago, you and I were both on air in Sydney talking about Boris Johnson just surviving that, and that being the beginning of the long march. Well, it really was, and here we are now. Essentially, a new leader is elected by 100,000 Conservative Party members, and they won't do that until the conference, which is scheduled for October. And for some reason, they're not changing the date.
OK, just briefly here, Laura, any policy implications?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Brexit. Boris Johnson was the champion of Brexit. He got it through, he owned it, but it still seems to divide some parts of this country. But I mean, with a chaos like this, with a upheaval in politics here in Westminster, I think good politicians never waste an opportunity when there is chaos. So it's kind of yet to be seen at the moment what happens. Nicola Sturgeon, for example, has been talking about and using this, saying, well, Boris Johnson was never our Prime Minister. This is why Scotland needs its independence. So there's, you know, that opportunistic mentality from her. Also, you can imagine his opponent in Keir Starmer. I mean, why wouldn't you use this? You'd be calling for an election if you were him. But look, let's go back a bit, because Boris Johnson in this press statement earlier today did want to talk about his legacy just a bit.
From getting Brexit done to settling our relations with the continent for over half a century, getting us all through the pandemic, delivering the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, the fastest exit from lockdown, and in the last few months, leading the West in standing up to Putin's aggression in Ukraine.
Well, there you go. So that's what he says is his legacy, and he builds on that. And as I mentioned at the top, he is arguably a Prime Minister that's led Britain through the biggest upheaval since the Great War. I mean, COVID, Brexit, it hasn't always been easy. Keir Starmer, in many ways, I think you'd agree with this, Boris Johnson was his biggest asset. He hasn't been able to get runs on the board in a pure sense for Labor. So this might change things up a bit for him. It changes the dynamics, but as you can imagine, he's saying Boris Johnson needs to go now and they need an election.
He needs to go completely. None of this nonsense about clinging on for a few months. He's inflicted lies, fraud and chaos in the country. And, you know, we're stuck with a government which isn't functioning in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And all of those that have been propping him up should be utterly ashamed of themselves.
Pete, we've seen a few of these leadership challenges and changes and rollings ourselves and stabbings in a political sense in Australia, of course. Surprisingly, the playbook here in the UK is very similar.
Yeah, and I wonder what the Queen makes of it all. Laura, thank you. We'll talk to you again next hour.